You're building a team of people to keep an eye out for you. And if you suck at what you do, they're not going to refer you. So the first thing, so I've got 4 pillars behind this concept of how you get more word of mouth referrals. It's all through caring, but the first pillar, you have to over deliver. You see, if somebody refers you a client and you simply just meet the expectations, that's not good enough anymore because anybody can do that. The bar is so low on customer service.
Hi, I'm James Taylor, business creativity and innovation keynote speaker, and this is The Creative Life, a show dedicated to you, the creative. If you're looking for motivation, inspiration, and advice while at home, at work, or on your daily commute, then this show is for you. Each episode brings you a successful creative, whether that's an author, musician, entrepreneur, performer, designer, or thought leader. They'll share with you their journey, their successes, their failures, their creative process, and much, much more. You'll find show notes for this episode as well as free training on creativity over at jamestaylor.me. Enjoy this episode. Hey there, it's James Taylor, and I'm delighted today to have on the show Matt Ward. In 2002, Matt started and built a successful website agency before selling the business to focus on his passion for helping businesses get more word of mouth referrals. He's a 40 Under 40 recipient and Chamber Small Business Owner of the Year. And Matt believes that the problem with small business is bananas. We're going to find out what that means. His new book, More, Word of Mouth Referrals, Lifelong Customers and Raving Fans, is out now. So welcome onto the show, Matt.
Thank you so much for having me, James. I greatly appreciate it.
So share with everyone what you're working on just now. What's going on in your life?
The book launch has been huge. Yeah, it's a big, as you know, you've talked to a lot of authors on your show, and a book launch is a rather big deal. It's not just writing the book. They say you put probably 25% of your time into writing the book and then 75% of the time marketing it. But that's just part of the process, and it's okay. But it's a learning process, which makes it a little bit more difficult too. So we're excited about that, and then and doing a lot of public speaking as well.
So I was just reading the other day Ryan Holiday's Perennial Seller, great book on writing, building platforms, and actually he said the key thing you need to make your book so good that its primary driver is word of mouth referrals. That's how people will learn. You know, you could put all this money behind a campaign, but if it's not a great book, if it doesn't get that word of mouth, it's dead in the water, really. So
yeah.
So actually, just talk us about your process of writing this book. Is this your first book that you're going to be publishing?
Well, so it's my second book, but I would consider it my first, because the first one I did was sort of just a collection of tips that I did when I was owning my website agency. And I was pretty much just giving that out to people, not really selling it. It's not even on Amazon. So this is primarily the primary source of what I'm doing now. And the effort that's gone into it has been rather huge. You know, lots of updates, adjustments, revisions, editing, and trying to figure out what the layout's going to look like, and, you know, talking to some friends, and they're bringing back that old mantra, look, done is better than perfect, which is partially true. I got a little stuck in my head with this book in the fact, oh, well, it's going to be printed, right? It's going to be printed. Mm-hmm. So I can't change it once it's printed. Well, that's not necessarily true. As you start to learn a little bit more, you can make file updates to Amazon. As long as it's not in greater than 10%, it's not a new edition. So once you start learning all those things, it becomes a lot more simple to do and straightforward. But I would not consider myself an author. I would consider myself a speaker, a thought leader, an entrepreneur. And so typing all of that content is challenging sometimes. You just have to just let it flow.
Yeah.
And as a good friend of mine, Mike Ganino, says, don't backspace yourself.
That's good. Yeah, separating that process of the creating and then the editing and kind of getting out your way a little bit. And I know that I have speaking to a lot of speakers recently who are authors, and he said there is that difference between a speaker who writes and a writer who speaks. And you kind of tend to choose your lane. You choose your main modality that you like to communicate, and then the other one is can often come secondary. But something you're seem to be very good at is, I know you work with like Tams and Webster, and I know you've been involved in things like Michael Port. So you're very good at putting mentors, advisors, people to help support you and I've seen your speaking. Who did you kind of go to in terms of mentors, either that you had personal relationships or that you kind of looked at from afar that kind of helped you with the process of writing that book?
That's an interesting question, because I think my general mentors have been around the speaking world per se. And I've watched speakers create books. So Mike Ganino has a Culture for Dummies book, and Joey Coleman has Never Lose a Customer Again, and Neen James has Attention Pays, and then obviously Michael Port. And so but it all kind of started when you roll it back to my friend Erik Wahl, who has been a mentor to me. I'm getting started in speaking, and he wrote 2 books, Unthink and The Spark and the Grind, which are all about creative. And for your creative people listening, those are 2 fabulous books to really get their hands on and kind of dig into from a creative perspective. Erik is one of the most creative people I've ever met, and he's able to put down on paper what you see him do live, which is fantastic. So I've taken sort of pieces of each one of these great people, and then I kind of revamped. But when I formatted my book, there's a great book out there called Exactly What to Say by Phil M. Jones. I've got a copy of it right here.
It's a great little book. It's a very small little book as well.
Very small book. That's right. And this thing is going to be a perennial bestseller. It's already a bestseller now. It's ranking like 600 on Amazon in total book sales. It's $15, but it's a super short read. And the formatting of the book is very simple. There's a lot of margin, a lot of white space. And I think what's so great about the creativity behind the formatting of this book is that it shows you how simplistic the messaging inside, the content inside that he wants you to learn is. And so one of the examples he gives is one of the 12 things to say to people and convince them to do business with you is just imagine. Well, James, just imagine if you could have more word of mouth referrals. I have now incorporated those 2 words into just about everything I say. And I took his guidance in this book, looked at the formatting, and formatted my book in a very similar way. I don't think it will end up being the exact same size because I'm not even sure that this size is available on Amazon. This is probably published by Box of Tricks Publishing.
I think he published, and actually that's one of because he is a speaker who writes, and right. I know he decided, because we were speaking at an event together earlier this year, and he said he really wanted to self-publish or independently publish because he works with a lot of clients. And one of the cool things you can do when you do that is he can say to a client, listen, I'm going to speak into your event, 500, let's get 500 copies. We'll put inside the front cover, it's going to be the logo of the brand or the company that you're speaking to as well. And he said you can only really do that if you're independently published, if you're self-published. Right.
And he actually has a page in his book which mentions to the reader that he can do that for your event, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
So one of sort of, I guess you would say, my mentors, even though he probably doesn't know it, Phil Jones, and the style in which he created this book, it becomes a reference book. So this actually sits on my desk, not on my bookshelf. My book is meant to be exactly that. It's a couple short chapters in the front and then 40 tips about how to connect deeper with people and get more word of mouth referrals. And they're sort of lessons with a tip. So each lesson about what you can do comes with a tip about how you can level that lesson up as well. So very simple, straightforward, and the reviews are coming in great. I'm very happy with them.
I love that format is because I'm the same. That book sits very close to my desk, and and I love those research heavy books as well, and where you can just like get, you basically lose a weekend just kind of reading them and you get really into it. But at the end, a lot of the time I feel after reading them, I kind of like, so what? Now what? What do I do? I've learned a lot and it's very entertaining, many of them, and it's very kind of intellectually stimulating. But is it really going to help my business? Is it really going to drive me forward as a person? And I think Phil's book, that format, and the format that you're taking as well, I think is great for that, because it's they say a book should either be highly practical or highly entertaining, and it's definitely highly practical.
So I read a lot of business books as well, and one of the ideas I had was to create this great book about the theory behind word of mouth referrals and why people should care more, because that's the ingredient that I believe matters. But when you write a long, lengthy business book, oftentimes it's theory, not actionable stuff. And so I decided for this first book, I would do action. I wanted something that people would. So my book, people are telling me now that the reviews are coming back, that it's taking them between 70 and 90 minutes to read the book in its entirety, which is fantastic, right? I love that because it allows them to wisp right through it and then pick it up and thumb through it when they say, okay, James Taylor, I want to connect with James one more time this month. What can I do? And they thumb right through it, flip right through it, and they pick I can do that. And then they do that item, which that item may be a shout out on Facebook. It may be a LinkedIn request. It might be a LinkedIn recommendation. It could be a number of different things that we talk about in the book. But it allows them to do practical and actionable things that don't take a lot of time to do.
Yeah.
Most of the ideas in the book take less than 10 minutes.
And I think also you can do that as a speaker when you're up on stage, when you tell everyone, hey, under your seat there's a copy of the book, or on the table there's a copy of the book, or as you leave there's going to be a copy of the book, and it'll take you 90 minutes to read through on your flight home today. When you're going back to, you can read that copy of the book, and I've seen that happen. I've seen, I think I've seen someone reading Phil's book on a plane recently, actually, and it's one of those, really, because it doesn't take up lots of space on the seat and things. So I love that strategy that you're going with.
Yeah, so that's where it's going. So that's what my time and effort has been focused into the last probably 6 months.
So you're knowing now, this idea of like word of mouth referrals.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, when we hear so much of the time now, it's all about social media and Instagram and all that, that jazz. Why is word of mouth still relevant in a very digitally connected age?
Well, I think the real trusting factor behind doing business with people is that referral, however that comes. And social media has played a great role in facilitating the connection of referrals, right? But what has happened over time is, as more and more systems and platforms come out and the way they're used, the referral is happening less and less and becoming much more of a lead and not a referral. See, there's a huge difference to say, James, I have a referral for you. Then, James, I know somebody who's a speaker that wants to be on your podcast, right? I mean, they're completely different things. Referrals are people that you want to talk to and are highly ready and actionable, ready to buy people, right? And so they want to talk to you and you want to talk to them. A lead is not really that. So when I owned my web agency for years, I would go to networking groups and I would ask for specific referrals. And somebody would say to me, oh, there's a shop down the street opening up. No, not a referral. That's a lead. And they may or may not need a website now. They may or may not want me. I tell you what, how about you go in and ask them all the questions, and then if they're ready to buy a website and they want to buy it from me because you've told them that I'm the best, then refer them to me. Mm-hmm. Until then, it's a lead. And to be perfectly honest with you, it's not that I don't want to talk to potential clients, but I have so many other referrals. I don't have time to talk to people who are leads. I need to talk to people who are the referrals. So when I started realizing that that's what was happening and that my website agency wasn't spending $1 on advertising all year long, for the last 4 years I owned it, I realized, why was that? And it turned out it was because I was sort of the unicorn in the industry, in that I would stay in touch with people, constantly having conversations, but moreover, not about business, right? I wasn't calling my contact or my client to say, hey, what are you up to? Want to buy more web services? No, that's not what it was about. Instead, it was just a simple check-in. And more often than not, about 75% of the time, our business was referred to us by people who weren't even clients. They were IT professionals who could build their own website. They didn't hire us to build their site, but when they were called to build websites, that's not what they did. They didn't manage IT or break fix, and so they would refer us. And so 75% of our new clients each year came from this partner network of 35 people. And all I would do was consistently touch them, share with them information, invite them to events, show up at their events. These are all basic things that you can do that take little to no money and very little time to be involved in. And those are how you produce more word of mouth referrals, because you generate a higher awareness, right? And marketers believe in top of mind awareness for marketing and advertising. And that's what this does, is it produces top of mind awareness.
But there's obviously an intentionality there as well. You have those list of people that you're wanting to provide value on a consistent basis to. And I'm also guessing it's important then that you can very clearly define what your value proposition is in the market, what your USP is. So it makes it easy for them to sell up, or when they spot opportunity, you're basically building a network of opportunity spotters for your business.
That's right. Yeah, you're building a team of people to keep an eye out for you. And if you suck at what you do, they're not going to refer you. So the first thing, so I've got 4 pillars behind this concept of how you get more word of mouth referrals. It's all through caring, but the first pillar, you have to over deliver. You see, if somebody refers you a client and you simply just meet the expectations, that's not good enough anymore, because anybody can do that. The bar is so low on customer service. Joey Coleman mentioned it in his book, Never Lose a Customer Again. In the first 100 days, the bar is so low that you absolutely have to impress. And so we would always talk about over delivering. And I don't mean under promise and over deliver, because that's staging the system, right? That's gaming it. You need to over deliver from all types of angles, whether it's the communication aspect, or the time back to the customer, or the delivery of the product and service, or the quality of the product and service. You got to find a way to over deliver in your business, and every business is different. So if you're a graphic designer, maybe the expectation from your client is that they'll get 2 logos, 2 mock-ups. Well, over delivering would be providing a third one. Maybe the expectation is that they see these logo mock-ups in 3 days. Over delivering is giving them in 2 days, right? So, maybe the expectation is 2 rounds of changes for each mock-up. Maybe over delivering is giving them 5, right? You have to decide what works for you and what works for your client. You cannot over deliver if you don't know what your client's expectation are. And once you have that conversation, know what your client is looking for, know what the expectations are, now you can over deliver. That's also where your USP comes in. So in the web agency that I had, 65% of our clients came to us telling us that they could not get hold of their current web provider.
Wow.
Right? So what was our over delivery mantra? Always call somebody back within 24 hours. No exceptions. And so when we didn't do that, we missed our mark. And inevitably, if we ever failed to do that on a consistent basis, we would lose a client, right? Because that's what their expectation was now, and we were over delivering on that every time.
That blows my mind. I mean, that one decided, and that's not uncommon.
No, think about the last business you called. I called somebody literally because I have a problem with my well water in my house. I called them to come fix the timer thing that puts the water softener in through the well and flushes it out. It's eating water softener every week. It should last like 6 weeks, right? Called them, I don't know, I think now it was 7 days ago, and I've not had a phone call back. Not even a response. Like, this is so common now. So if you can just call people back, you're going to win a lot of business. Right.
And last week I was with another great speaker, Josh Linkner, who speaks on innovation. Actually speaks similar to Erik Wahl, actually, in terms of innovation and creativity, stuff I speak about. And we were actually having this conversation with a couple of speaker bureaus that were there, and they were all saying one of the things we love working with Josh is his team are like really fast to respond. And he said you would be amazed at the number of speakers where this is like a 20K or 30K gig, and they don't get back to you for 3 days, or they're really slow in getting back. It's just really, really slow, or they make it very difficult to work with you. So not only does Josh and his team, always that which isn't undelivering. I think that's just delivering what should be getting delivered. But then what they'll do is they add all these other things which really delight and have the element of being remarkable. You will remark, if I'm someone that's booking a conference, I will remark to another conference organizer, say, oh, have you seen what Erik does? Have you seen what Matt does? Have you seen what Josh does? James does? They're kind of remarkable things. And it kind of blows my mind that even the basic level, just the speed that doesn't get done.
Yeah. I mean, that is the biggest staple I think you have to have in business. And I think part of the problem is business owners don't have systems. They don't set up CRMs. They don't have virtual assistants if they're a sole proprietor. It's a cost-saving methodology. And the problem is it not only is saving them cost, it's costing them a lot of opportunity. Because I would always be the guy swooping right in and taking the job. Because if they everybody wants to call 3. I don't know why. It's the rule of 3. You know how that works. Comedian tells three people walk into a bar, right? It's always the rule of 3. And so when people are looking for services, they look at 3 people. Same with speakers, right? Same with, when authors are shopping their publishing contract around, they're calling 3 publishing houses, right? It's always 3. And if you're the first to respond, you've got a leg up.
Yeah.
Now, can you imagine? You see, here's the caveat, James. You don't know if you're the only one to respond, but you do know how quickly you respond. And if you respond very quickly, you will feel like you're the first to respond. If you are the only one to respond and you responded quickly, you could just send them a DocuSign agreement and they probably would just sign it. They don't probably even care how much money's on it because you're the person they reached out to, and you're the only one that replied. Like, you're the only option at that point.
So as you've been built, you built the web agency and you're now into the speaking, but can you tell us about a time when you worked on something, you worked on a project, you gave it your heart and your soul, but for whatever reason, it didn't work out like you'd hoped? And more importantly, what was the lesson that you took from that experience?
Yeah, so we built this proprietary software in the web agency. We called it Crescendo. It was going to magnify your message. And we did a bunch of market research, and we chose to go after the real estate industry at the time. And that may have been our first mistake. I'm not sure. But we chose to go after this industry. We talked to a number of realtors. We talked to them about price point, methodology, product. And we were told across the board it was a no-brainer at all the things. We went to market with it and did not sell one contract, not one license to it. And what this thing did, it was pretty cool, was we would write generic blog content about the real estate industry and load variables based on where they were located. So it would be blogging, automated blogging on their behalf, that would, and we set it up to automatically tie into their WordPress site so they didn't have to touch a thing. It was so great, such a great tool. And it failed miserably. So, we had the brochures, we had the rack cards, we had the marketing, we did the email blast, we did some telemarketing, we did all kinds of stuff. And it just either was the wrong timing of the wrong market or a lot of different reasons. And so we shelved it. And what I learned from that was that even though you do all your proper preparation, it doesn't mean you won't fail. Where the key is understanding I didn't throw it in the trash. It sat on the shelf waiting for the next opportunity because it could be modified, right? So that was lesson 1. And lesson number 2 was, the time it took me to develop that and take away from my core product probably resulted in less revenue and sales coming in from my core services. In an attempt to diversify and serve a specific market, I may have in turn cannibalized some revenue from the main service we were offering. So we didn't end up resurrecting it or having the right opportunity to resurrect it.
But I think that challenge there of knowing you can't stand still, you have to develop new products, you have to try, you have to experiment, is one for companies of any size. I was reading something the other day about a number of very large multinationals now are almost separating out the role of the CEO and the role of like a chief growth officer or chief revenue officer. So the CEO essentially runs the business of all the existing products, your staple, the key, the things that really drive the revenue, 80% of the revenue at that point. And then this other person is really responsible for a more medium-term revenue, and it's about creating the next generation of products, because it's very hard to sometimes, even the biggest companies, they struggle with this all the time. How you innovate when your company is a 100 billion plus company. It's sometimes easier for you and I or a small business to do this, because we can adapt. We can create that minimum viable product. If it doesn't work, okay, fine. You've lost there's opportunity cost there, but you can try again. So you kind of tried that, didn't quite work, but you obviously learned. So you learn in terms of, as you do new experiments, that just to always ensure that there's processes and things that are going to maintain at least the core part of your business.
Yeah, I think that's the key, is to make sure you're putting enough effort into the core part of your business and not pulling time away from that. And then the other lesson I learned through that other project we did was we were the primary web company for Toys for Tots all over the United States. So we had 45 different sites of Toys for Tots using our website services. And then one day they made the decision to go internal, and that, hurt financially. So, we were just like 2 days away from their annual billing when we got the notification, and we had done a whole bunch of development, never saw that coming. The lesson I learned from that primarily was that you don't want too many whales in your company, right? If you have a large whale of a client that's taken up more than 10 or 20%, that can hurt you financially. So we were always very cognizant of having multiple pillars to stand on, so that we would never have, and we would monitor, our largest revenue client, gross revenue, percentage-wise compared to the business. And we didn't want that to be above 10%.
And as you've been making this move from business owner of an agency now into speaking and writing, can you tell us about maybe a key aha moment, a light bulb moment, a time where you had an insight, you said, okay, this is the direction I want to go with my work and my life?
Yeah, so I always knew I wanted to be a speaker, because with the agency I was doing business development speaking, and I was doing a lot of speaking for email marketing, for Constant Contact, and I was really enjoying it. And as I went through the process of becoming a better speaker through the Heroic Public Speaking program with Michael and Amy Port, I started to really reflect on my life and where I wanted to go. And when the opportunity came up to work collaboratively with people in that program, I developed some really true, meaningful bonds with people, creative people. And I found that my process of creativity is actually with other people. It's not alone. I can't sit alone in a room. I have trouble writing on an airplane because my thoughts get all confused. So what I have found is that if I can talk to people and bounce ideas off of them, they can pull out of me what I didn't know was in there. And that's exactly what happened with this entire concept of this book and what I talk about now with word of mouth referrals. See, I believe that the word of mouth referral is based on caring, that people don't just do business with who they know, like, and trust. They do business with who they know, like, trust, and care about. And I define that caring methodology as the fact that they care about your business to the point where they don't want it to fail. So they actually will refer you so it doesn't fail. And why do they care about you enough? Because you cared enough about them to send them little things. So for instance, when James does something nice for somebody, right? You send him a little cycling keychain because you know he is a cyclist, right? So you know enough about people that they've shared publicly on social media or on podcasts to know that that's what they do. And that's what they're about. So you're gifting or giving information or gifts for the purpose of what the other person would like. And I think the way that came out of me was my group of creatives. We were talking one day, and they started, I had this speech, and it was about working on your business, not in your business, similar to the E-Myth. And that's what I had effectively done. So I was going to talk to business owners about that. And they started asking me the core concepts of that. and I started kind of bringing out what that was and how over delivery was key, and how an owner has to teach their employees how they would over deliver so that they can ensure that their employees over deliver when they're not present. And out of that came this whole concept of caring. Turned out I had been doing it for the last 14 years and didn't even know it. It was just inherent in my personality. And so as we started talking more and more and more, I was able to realize that I actually had a framework I had been working within and didn't even know it. You know, and I think we just go by our daily lives and this is our routine. And so I just thought everybody else cared about everybody else, but apparently not.
But it's interesting as well that word, I was just having a conversation the other day with Ron Kaufman. Ron Kaufman is a great speaker from the States, lives in Singapore. And he speaks on customer service. That's his main topic. But he said, if you really think about it, he said, it's really caring. And exactly what you were saying, he said, but it's in the past, it's been very difficult for businesses to get to bring in a speaker to talk about caring, because it feels like a soft, fuzzy word. And so you have to think about the messaging and there's other ways that you can communicate that. But actually, when you're up there and you're giving your talk, you're giving your presentation and impacting upon that world, everyone, when you talk about caring and the way you've just described it as well, everyone knows instinctively what that feels like. And they know what it feels like to receive it and to give it, but just no one's ever really spoken, and often spoken in the context of business this way.
Yeah, and when I first came out, so I have this word that I've joined together, two words. I call it care package, right? So conceptually, we know what a care package is. When we send care packages to kids at camps or college kids or even the military overseas, it's gifts that they would like, not that you want, but that they would like. The problem was I was leading with that, and so people weren't coming to sessions because they thought I was going to teach them how to create gifts. So we eliminated that from the title. Now, most of the titles revolve around how to get more word of mouth referrals. I actually talk to HR organizations, HR conferences about how to become the employer of choice through retention of employees and recruitment of employees. Because when you think about it, we don't care about our employees enough in a way that matters, right, to them. So we changed the dialogue a little bit. Just the wording in the title, the wording in the description, people show up to the session. And then when we start using the word caring on stage, now they get it. It's getting them in the room. So it's oftentimes, I learned from folks in the speaking world that you sell them what they want and give them what they need. So this is the same thing in authorship, right? The book, people judge a book by its cover, right? And the cover can't be misleading, but you also need to give them more in the book. You need to over deliver on what you're giving them, and you need to make sure that what's inside that book matters to them and is ultimately what they need to go to the next level and take action.
But we love that. I think as humans, we love that, picking up that book and we think, oh, this is a book about mixed marketing. You read it, and then actually this thing happens, a pivot happens in the book, and you feel, oh, wow, is actually really about this, And I never, and it changes. And obviously, this is what great speakers do. People go into the room with one set of beliefs about some particular thing, and when they leave the book, when they leave the room, they're transformed. Then they have a completely different, and people call it different things. And the unconventional truth, or I've heard Patrick Schwerdtfeger refers it to. But I think that's a really important point that you do obviously as a storyteller. Is you bring people in with that way, because everyone understands word of mouth. Okay, I get it. I understand. I know it's important for my business, for what I'm doing. But when they leave the room, they're changed. They have a different conception.
Yeah, and I open my sessions with a story about John Cronin from johnscrazysocks.com. And John's company went viral. And it's not because John has Down syndrome, right? He and his father started a company on Crazy Socks. They design some of their own, but they also buy and resell crazy socks. And they went from like $1 million in revenue their first year to over $4 million in their second year, right? And why? It's because John's mission is to spread happiness. So what does John do differently? I mean, he's a retail product, right? So generally my sessions and my content is great for service-based businesses because a lot of what I talk about is service-based oriented. But John has figured out how to do it for a product-based business. What John does differently is he includes a small package of candy in every single shipment. Something you didn't expect. He over-delivered, right? And he surprised you, which is the third pillar of the care package. Surprise, right? The second thing he includes is a handwritten note thanking you for your order, right?
Wow.
So think about that for a second. I mean, I think he's at the point now where the handwritten note is duplicated. It's printed because they have so many of them, but you still get a thank you card inside that package. And what he's figured out to do that a lot of other people, it's not that we don't care, James. We care. We just have lost the focus on caring. We've gone into a sales economy where we're starting to measure how many calls, how many dials we get, and how many this, how many that, and how many opportunities. And while all that matters, we have to develop relationships with people that we care about so that we can go to work every day with a smile on our face and know that we can do business with people we absolutely friggin' love. That's the concept, right? That I think the creatives listening right now probably would know if they had a Jane Doe or a John Doe who they knew if that client emailed them right now, they would get like heart palpitations. They just don't like working with that client. Either the client's too demanding, they don't pay on time, they want way quicker turnaround, they don't pay enough, the expectations are too high for what they're asking for. I think that we don't have clients like that if we have people that we care about who are our referral sources, right? Because people always refer you people like them. That's just a natural instinct.
Which is which just kind of spreads it out, and it's that thing of your vibe attracts your tribe, and if you are David Burkus, great writer who wrote A Friend of a Friend, and it's all about that. It's actually we kind of don't think enough about the community of people that we're interacting, and that there's certain, if you want a message to spread, for example, in the case of word of mouth, how the people you choose to spread it with, it's like nodes on a system. They spread it really quickly. And if you're baked into your thing, your product, your service, your message, this idea of caring, then we all want that. We all want to give it and we want to receive it. So actually you're providing that service of allowing people to kind of transmit that. Right.
And I think, so to round out the other two pillars, the second pillar is, so we've got, surprise, non-self-serving acts is the fourth pillar, right? So those are things like when you give books to people. So you hear somebody talk about like the E-Myth, right? We talk about that. I know you ask people all the time, book that they like, or, if they had nothing, what would they buy, right? So when I get in conversations with people about how all this got started for me, I tell them about a book I read. And if they perk up about that, I've got 10 copies of the book on my bookshelf. I will inscribe, write a note in the front cover, and mail it to them. And the key to this, James, is ensuring that when you buy the book from Amazon, you don't ship it to the person. You ship it to yourself. You pay double shipping. Yeah. Don't be cheap. Right? Yeah. And then inscribe it, because it's the message that matters. It goes back to the handwritten thank you card. The second pillar is listening. So it's understanding what people are all about. Do they like to cycle? What's their hobbies? Do they like to travel? Somebody did me a favor recently, and I sent her a small little keychain. I don't know. The thing probably cost me $6, right? She had fallen in love with Paris. And I sent her a little Eiffel Tower keychain. And, the impact that has and what people do with this stuff, they take pictures and put it all over social media. Like that, who they are. And in the book, I write a story about Ronnie Bartles, who was a partner of ours that would send us business at the website agency. And she wrote a blog one time, and just buried in that blog, in the middle of that blog, was a single line about her love of chocolate covered bacon. And within days, she got a package of chocolate covered bacon. Now, there's no note in there that says, the address. I don't include my business card. It's inscribed with the word Matt. She knows who Matt is, right? There's no mention of thanks for the referral, right? Yeah, there comes a point where you need to thank people for referrals, but that's not why I was doing this, right? I was doing this because she loved chocolate covered bacon, and I loved reading her blogs. And I wanted to show appreciation for her and the fact that I actually read it. And so what happens, James? She gets the package, and within an hour, she's taking all kinds of photos. She's on Instagram. She's on Facebook. She's on Twitter. And my notifications are lighting up like a Christmas tree. That's a byproduct. Referrals are a byproduct of caring. And if you put a little bit of effort in, now you were talking about cultivating these relationships. You can't start with 100 people. If you want to get referrals tomorrow, I'm going to tell you right now, don't do that. You try and cultivate relationships with 100 people, this will fail miserably. Start with 6. 6 people, start to learn about them, start to understand them, start to read what they put out there in the world on LinkedIn, connect with them personally on Facebook. And sometimes I have people say, "Oh, I don't connect on Facebook personally. Only, I don't mix my personal and business." Okay, well then you don't want more referrals. Because here's the thing. People tell you their entire life on Facebook, right? You know when their birthdays are. But just don't be the person that adds into that whole 250 person thread that says happy birthday, right? Be the person that looks at the upcoming birthdays in the back end of Facebook and then sends a card in advance, right? Like little things like that. That's what sets you apart and does it differently, because social media is all that noise right now. And the only way to cut through it is to use the information you get. I call it social media intelligence or espionage. You grab that information and you take it offline. So if somebody goes to Starbucks versus Dunkin' Donuts versus Rojo's Coffee Shop in Lambertville, Pennsylvania, where they frequent. Because they check into these places, they go to these places.
It's almost like with big data companies. They know all this stuff. They can reel the data. If you go and shop at Target in the States, for example, or Tesco's in the UK, they know that you have a cat. And they're doing it, but they do it in a certain kind of way. Mm-hmm. It can easier for us because we don't have millions of customers. We just have a small number of relationships that are high touch for us, high impact for us. They're people whose work we admire. We like what they do. We're kind of learning from them. Sometimes we don't have initially a personal relationship at the start, but sometimes it can develop and we can really get to know, mm-hmm. and they become mentors or advisors to us as well. But it's putting that personal. So much of today is what we do is not really that personal, right? And it's adding that, and it's a real pattern interrupt for people when they get that.
Yeah, and let me share with you a brief little story about this. Is that I have a client who I've worked with to help him create more personal care packages, get closer to people. And he's in the real estate industry. He helps people close on real estate deals. He's an attorney. And he wanted to give Christmas gifts, baskets. And I said, no, you can't do that. It's edible. It's going to go away. It won't be memorable. It's more forgettable. So I says, are you friends with her on Facebook? He says, yes. We pull it up. She's at the football field, the American football field, right? And I thought she was at a soccer field. He says, no, her kids play football, American football. I'm like, wow, okay. So she's got 5 kids, and they've all played American football. So she's a huge football fan. I says, why don't you just go right down the street to the local sportswear shop where they make the high school jackets and stuff? I says, they got the logo. Buy a white football helmet, and have them put the logo on the side, then put it in a little case with a plaque that says #1 Blue Devil Mom. She's never throwing that away.
Yeah.
It costs you about as much, maybe $5 more than a gift basket would. And she knows you cared enough to know who she was. Right? That took me less than 5 minutes to figure out. This stuff doesn't take a lot of time. I had somebody just email me yesterday after reading the book and said, I loved your book. I have just ordered on a website. It was called caviar.com. I had never heard of it, but they cater to sending food to people, somewhat like Uber Eats, I guess. And she ordered a Ben & Jerry's Sunday party for her partner, for a business that partners with her, and she wanted to show them appreciation. So she ordered a Ben & Jerry's Sunday party. It's being delivered today. And she told the client it was coming, and she shared with me the response in the email, and they were like, you are so amazing. This is why we love partnering with you. Right?
It's the ripples effect of these things.
Yeah. Just the tiniest little thing can make a huge change. You know, and I think, honestly, the cost of that Ben & Jerry's thing was under $50 US. It was not a lot of money.
So one of the questions I have you on this, and we kind of get to tools now as well, is in order to kind of keep up with these relationships, to track, what do you use? Are you using a CRM, or what tools do you find very useful that anyone that really is thinking very more intentionally about word of mouth should be using?
So the first thing is, if you don't, you've got to get a CRM for your business, regardless of word of mouth but you have to be able to track what you're doing with your clients and what emails are coming in. I would highly recommend you get a tool that plugs into your email. So if you're a Gmail user, there's a lot of systems out there. I personally currently am using the Hubspot CRM system. It's free. And it's perfect to just track your emails. When I work with clients, I have a downloadable sheet I give them called a client intake form and a contact intake form and a contact activity form. And those are two different forms that basically you fill out details about your contact as they share them with you, right? So that, it's not something you give to your contact when you onboard them as a client. It's simply something that, okay, if I wanted to, grow a deeper relationship with James, every time I listen to his podcast and he mentions something unique, I would write it down on this form. So he might mention marital status and names of spouses. He might mention kids' names, might mention hobbies like cycling. That's where I learned it, listening to the podcast, right? So favorite foods, all these type of things. And you just log them, and then you pull that sheet out when you want to use it to connect, right? So that's one tool. Another tool I like and have found is many people are familiar with mind mapping.
Yeah.
Now, I was not very good at mind mapping. I didn't know where to begin, and we had a guy on our podcast to talk about how to really get started. And after that, I started using it, and I found the greatest way to use mind mapping. I use mind mapping for tracking referral sources. So what I do is I put in the middle, this box that says referral source, and then out of the side, I pull a line and I put the event or the contact, however that works. And then I just keep that growing out for who connected me to who that eventually became a client. So what I do is I actually update the mind mapping software when I have a new client. So if I book a speaking gig, I'll say, okay, booked a speaking gig. Here's the name of the event. And I'll trace in between, from the source to there, how I got connected. So was it a cold call? Was it a referral? Was it an email marketing? Was it the podcast? However that works. That allows me to visually see it.
Is it Mindmeister? And
I'm glad you asked. I use Coggle.it, Coggle.it, and that's a free service. I've been very happy with it, and it works on my phone and it works, on the desktop. So those are the two tools that I use a lot of.
And we spoke earlier just about you talking about the E-Myth book. Is that the book? If I was to ask you, what was the one book that you would recommend? You've maybe gifted more often than others to people. What is that book?
It is not that book. However, that is a book I would recommend to somebody who wants to grow their business and turn their business over to somebody else or sell it, is the E-Myth. The book I gift to everybody. What I have basically 3 books I give to people. right now. One is actually four. One is Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi. And that's what started this entire process for me many years ago. Read that book, and that book is not about eating, even though I'm a big guy. That book is actually about giving without the expectation of getting anything in return. And it's a habit that you have to condition yourself to. It's very hard. You give and you give and you give, and eventually you feel dissatisfied that you're not receiving anything in return of anything of substance or sometimes you'll give to people and they won't even thank you for giving. And so that's very difficult when this process starts, but it's a habit. You just have to keep doing it. That's a fantastic book. I give away Steal the Show for anybody who wants to be a public speaker. I give away Never Lose a Customer Again by Joey Coleman. And then Unthink by Erik Wahl, which is that creative book I mentioned earlier.
All great books, all great books.
Yeah.
And what about music? I don't know if you're a big music buff, but what would that one album or that one record be that you...
Well, so I have, I use Spotify. Now I will tell you that my spouse, Lisa, she is crazy awesome at music, and she can name, if a song comes on the radio in like 3 notes, she can name it. Like she can give you the title, she can sing you the lyrics, and she can tell you the artist. It's probably even the year it came out. I'm nowhere like that. I get the lyrics messed up, right? So on my, I love some 80s music. I'm like, the 80s guy. But one of my favorite songs I listen to like get into like deep thought is Sound of Silence by Disturbed, which is just a fantastic song. I also enjoy, a cappella music. So Pentatonics is great. I really like the vibe that they give off. I like Toby Keith's American Soldier and stuff like that. And I like Garth Brooks. Let me see what's on this one. Let's see. The Police. I got The Police, Eric Clapton, Bryan Adams.
What we'll do, we'll put some of these links here
Toto.
now.
Yeah.
You're going to have to create your own Spotify playlist.
Oh, I do have.
So
that's good.
You're going to have to give me the public link of your Spotify playlist, and everyone can just check out and listen to all those. And then, got a final question for you, Matt. I want you to imagine that you wake up tomorrow morning and you're going to have to start from scratch. You're going to have to start over again. You've got all the skills that you've acquired over the years, but no one knows you. You know no one. You have to restart. What would you do? How would you restart?
James, I've enjoyed this interview immensely, and I have to tell you, this is a question I've been looking forward to since we actually booked the interview. There's something that I just love sharing with people. It really is. I wish I knew then what I knew now. It's about connecting, right? So if I had nothing, I'm hoping I'm given the liberty of at least having a LinkedIn account with some connections. I will tell you.
Maybe.
Well, I don't know them. They're just connections, right? One of the things I would do is just literally, I do catch-up calls with people just to say, hey, what are you up to? This is what I'm up to. What are you up to? This is what I'm up to. They're not sales pitches. Probably about a month ago, I spent about 4 hours going through LinkedIn doing catch-up calls, requesting meetings, just to, hey, catch up. Let's catch up. I had 53 calls scheduled from that. 53. One of them randomly turned into a referral for a very large printing conference. So it's not about the referral per se. It's about just catching up. It's touching base. It's about staying in touch. So if I didn't have the actual connections, what I would do is I would go on LinkedIn. I would find something in common with someone, and I would send them a connection request. And once I did that, I would not sell them anything. I would let my content out on LinkedIn produce some value, right? But I would look at who they're connected to. And now that we have a connection in common, I would say, hey, James, looks like you and I have X person in common. Would love to connect. And then I would take the two of you and see who else is in common. So I was lucky enough to grow up in Hershey, Pennsylvania, Chocolatetown, USA. And I wanted to grow closer to the marketing department in Hershey. So I connected with one person who had left a job at Hershey Foods. And I connected with one other person who was connected to that person who still worked there. And then I went right down the marketing tree at Hershey Foods and said, looks like we have 2 connections in common. Looks like we have 3. Looks like we have 4. And I built something like 27 connections in the marketing department at Hershey Foods. Now, you might say, okay, great. What have you done with that? Well, I haven't done anything. I don't need to do anything. I'm not trying to sell them on anything. But if I need a connection or I need an introduction, they've been seeing my content for some time now.
But
so I
there's
might
a
be
familiarity there. They're getting.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And so that's what I would do is I would just start with one person, because it's like David Burkus said, friend of a friend, right? Friend of a friend. It's these levels of who you know. My grandfather told me years ago when I was 18 years old, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I'm like, no. But if I get into a conversation with who I know, I can't hold it. What good is it? He's like, someday you'll figure out it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Well, I think we've all very much kind of learned that on today's interview. Thank you so much for coming on, Matt. If people want to connect with you, learn more about the book and the other things that you've got going on, where's the best place for them to go and do that?
My website, breakthrough-champion.com. breakthrough-champion.com.
Wonderful. And we're going to put all the links here. People go, James, if you're watching on YouTube or somewhere else, go to jamestaylor.me, just type in Matt Ward, and you're going to find all the links that we've been discussing today, possibly including that Spotify playlist.
Yes, I'll get that over to you. Absolutely.
Matt, thanks so much for coming on today and sharing the story of your creative life.
Thanks for having me. I greatly appreciate it.
If you're interested in living a more creative life, then I'd love to invite you to join me as I share some of the most successful strategies and techniques that high-performing creatives use. I put them all together in a free downloadable ebook that you can get by going to jamestaylor.me. That's jamestaylor.me to get your free downloadable ebook on creativity.